So let me give you just a sense of the types of complaints that you could get uh, that would warrant the EEOC to get involved, because you're going to be surprised at what can be alleged and what could cause one of these complaints, and the standard is not very high. So, for example, I'm going to give you some experience I had. Types of complaints: snowstorm. We had an employee that complained that he was sent out into a snowstorm and that was deliberately done by the manager to make him fail on his numbers and on his results for that month. This was quite surprising for me because the assignments usually went out 2 weeks in advance. Obviously, you can't predict a snowstorm 2 weeks in advance, but nonetheless, we had to address the complaint. I'm going to walk through the process with you in a second here. We still had to do everything that goes with the process because it was alleged that we used a snowstorm to discriminate against someone, and obviously it wasn't true. We had a training complaint. Somebody complained that they were not sent to specific training. Their supervisor declined them going to a specific training that the agency had, and they filed a complaint, again, under the EEOC, claiming that they were discriminated against because they were not allowed to attend this training. The only problem was the training had specific requirements for someone to go to the training, and the manager was just complying with the requirements, which clearly showed the individual was not qualified to go. But nonetheless, a complaint was filed, and we had to follow the process. I talked earlier about awards. You can get complaints on awards. Anytime you're dealing with money or promotions, complaints can be filed on that. Complaints can even be filed on assignments, whether someone is not getting the best assignments that make the most money or make the least money. So you see how these can weave their way into everything you do. Anything you do and everything you do can be complained on, and you'll have to respond to it. We had one person one time that was doing a side task for us, and we spread the task around to different people over the years so everybody would have the ability to do it. And we'll talk about that when we talk about how to prevent these complaints. And the person was doing a horrible job, completely not listening to what he was instructed to do and how he's instructed to do it. So finally, we removed the person from doing this side task, if you will, and that generated a complaint. That was a very lengthy complaint that actually went to trial. And it did not even involve salary. No salary was involved, neither was a promotion involved. So you can see how these complaints can get into everything you do. Obviously, when you're hiring, when you're firing, complaints can be generated through that. We also had a complaint where 2 employees bumped in an office. And one of the persons that was involved in the bump was a manager. One was a non-manager, and they just happened to brush each other in the office as one was reaching for a file. That resulted in a complaint. Again, another lengthy defense on our part on that EEOC complaint. So as you can see, anything can generate a complaint. And in my experience, and I never worked for the EEOC, but in my experience, there's not much that will be denied filing for a complaint. Now, that doesn't mean they're going to win them all. They're probably not. They're probably not going to win the majority of them. But here's the thing. You still have to deal with it. You're still going to have to walk through this process, which I'm going to walk through with you in a minute, to deal with it. So it can be time consuming. It can be frustrating, but it is part of leadership. And we will get to the section where I'm going to show you how you can prevent these complaints from occurring, because I had a very successful record actually in preventing complaints. And in the last few years of my career, I can't remember one. And we had quite a good sized staff. So I think I've got some good pointers for you to help you on that one. So let's talk about the EEO investigator. You get the email, you get the call. What can you expect? So the first thing they're going to want to do is they're going to want to ask you some questions. They're going to try to set up a time with you. When can we talk? And they're going to try to set up a time, and they're going to want to talk with you. Now, each investigator is a little different. maybe it was because of I had one person that was filing a lot of complaints that the investigator would just send me the questions and have me answer them first, and then we talk later. And some of them didn't even have a conversation on the phone with me, but others did. And what they'll want to do is they'll want to talk with you first, and they're going to pepper you with questions. Now, here's where you have to figure out what is your policy, what is your company's policy on that. On the federal government side, we would obviously report that a complaint's been filed. Usually before the EEO investigator came to our level in headquarters, they were already notified a complaint was filed, and then the investigator was free to contact us. So my headquarters office always knew when the complaints were coming down, but obviously they didn't tell us. So we were free to talk with the investigators initially and answer their questions. Now, this is another thing that I want to get into with you. So they're going to call you, they're going to want to talk to you. Obviously, follow your agency policy or your company's policy. Your company may want an attorney involved. Your company may want an attorney on the call. I don't know what the policy might be, but I can tell you in the federal government, they had a policy that was just the opposite. On the initial questioning, they did not want any attorneys involved. So you were pretty much on your own in my scenario. When the EEO investigator contacted me and started asking questions, I was on my own. I even contacted headquarters one time, the Office of Civil Rights, and I was told, just go ahead and answer the questions. We can't get involved right now. So they would not get involved. The attorneys would not get involved. It was pretty much on us or the manager that was being alleged or being called a witness to answer the questions and work with the investigator. So again, sometimes they would call you on the phone, they would ask questions, and then from the questions, they would put it into an affidavit, which is a kind of a sealed, like a statement that you're making. It's a court document. You're swearing under oath that the answer to these questions are correct, okay? Now, sometimes they sent ours in advance. Sometimes they had the phone call first, and then they sent the affidavit with the questions. So the questions would go something like this. Are you Stephen M. Mattioli? Yes. Do you supervise employee X? Yes. Were you aware this employee is, let's say, male or female? Yes. Were you aware on this date? So they just kind of walk down through the charge. Were you aware on this date that this employee was assigned this company when there was a snowstorm planned, and on and on and on. Some complaints you would get maybe 9, 10 questions. Some of them you'd get 20. And this is where I really want to give you some pointers on this, because this is one of the very important topics that I learned going through the process, going through the court system. This affidavit, what they're going to do is they're going to ask you questions based on the complaint. They're going to tell you who the complainant is, what the complaint is, and they're going to ask you a series of questions. Now, and then they're going to ask you to fill out the affidavit form where you swear under oath that those questions that you're answering are correct to the best of your knowledge. Now, a couple things. Number one, I always requested that they give me the affidavit. I would answer questions, but I wanted to see the affidavit. The second thing is sometimes that affidavit is going to ask you things that you may not know, or that you might have to dig in your notes to know. So don't be rushed. This is a very important document. What I found out later in the process is this document is looked at by everyone. The judges look at it, the attorneys look at it, the complainant gets a copy of it. The complainant gets a copy of everything you tell the EEOC, everything. So don't rush through it. If it's asking for data, you may need to say, I'm going to need some time to look this data up. This person is alleging that they didn't get choice assignments for 3 years. That's going to take me some time to go through the data and find out what they were assigned, what other folks were assigned, and if they were not assigned the best, why, what was the thing? Maybe it was travel, maybe it was something else. But don't be rushed into answering the questions if you don't know. Make sure you have the data and take the time you need to go back through your data to make sure it's correct. This is a very, very important document on an EEOC complaint. It is your testimony. It begins your whole testimony in the process. Don't be rushed. The second thing I will tell you is don't be pushed by the EEO investigator on what to say. There were situations with me and some of my staff where the EEO investigator was not attempting to change our answer, but basically saying, don't put all that information down. Just say this or that, but don't. One of my managers was writing basically a page response to one question. And don't be pressured. If you want to write a page response to a question, obviously consult your attorney. We didn't have attorneys. You write what you think you need to write for that question, whatever it is. The judge is going to see that. Everyone's going to see it. Don't be pressured into what to write or how long to write. My manager wrote a page on one question. The EEO investigator did not like it, and he basically said, if you don't like my long response, then I'm not signing it. Because it's not that affidavit is not the EEO investigator's sworn statement. It is your sworn statement. Make sure it's correct. Make sure it says everything you want it to say. And be absolutely honest on it. Be absolutely truthful. And answer the questions to the best of your ability. Make sure you look up whatever you need to give the correct response on that affidavit. I can't stress how important that document is in the process. So after that, after you talk with them, after you give your affidavit, then they're going to go back. They're going to talk with the complainant. They're going to show the complainant your affidavit. They're going to show them your responses. And the complainant has a right now to come back with more questions. So usually what would happen is I'd answer the first one. It may be 10, 15 questions. Then the investigator would go back to the complainant. They'd talk things over. Then he'd come back with more questions where the complainant gets to ask kind of like follow-up questions on the responses to your question. This is all part of the process. Just be honest, answer them correctly, and you won't have a problem. So after you do that, then it kind of goes into the legal realm. And again, I'm coming from the federal government side where it goes to the attorneys now. They look at everything. They look at what was alleged. They look at your affidavit. They may take affidavits from more than one person, by the way, on the same complaint. There was a number of times where me, another manager, maybe 3 people were getting the same affidavit from one complaint. So they're going to give everybody these same questions who may have been a witness to it, may have known about it, and then they're going to get them all together. They're going to look at their responses, maybe come back with some further questions. Then they're going to get with their attorneys. They're going to show our attorneys, and then they're going to talk things over. Now, here's where the process can become formal, okay? We talked about mediation and we talked about settlement, but a lot of that depends on what the complainant wants to do. If the complainant is really genuine, they'll probably mediate whatever it was. Or a settlement. If you were doing something wrong, there will be a settlement. But some of the complainants I had, they didn't want to mediate and they didn't want to settle. They wanted to go formal. They wanted to get some type of ruling. They wanted to get some type of benefit from the process. It's my opinion, obviously. But you have no control over the process once you give your statement and and the other witnesses give their statement. Then it's with the EEOC on what's going to happen and the attorneys. And this is where your company, your attorneys take control of the process, and now they're going to decide what they're going to do. And this is the next step in the process, and this is the very important step that we're going to talk about next, and that is your attorneys. Because your attorneys, or your headquarters, or your HR, whatever you want to call them, they are going to take control of the process at this point. And there's going to be one important decision that they have to make, and you're not going to be able to change their mind on this, but it is going to affect you. So we're going to talk about that next. Okay, so let's pick it up here. Let's talk about the attorney's role in the whole process. Now, when you get a complaint, a discrimination complaint, one of the first people that you have to convince of your innocence, if you are innocent, we'll talk about that in a minute, the first person you have to convince is your attorneys. Agency attorneys, personal attorneys, whatever attorney you're using, they're the first people that you have to convince that you have done nothing wrong. And I'll tell you why. I had 2 or 3 separate attorneys, probably 5, now that I'm thinking about it, that I dealt with on EEOC complaints over the years. And each one of those attorneys did a fantastic job for our agency, for our division, for our office, for me personally. And one of the reasons why they did is because they saw the evidence, they saw the affidavits, they saw my notes and all the things I kept, and they were convinced that the complainant's allegations were not founded. And once they were convinced that they were not founded, these attorneys went to war for us. They really did. Now, let me tell you, they don't always go to war for you in the government, because the minute they sense that you did something wrong, maybe you did discriminate, maybe you did make a mistake, they are not going to defend you. They're going to push for settlement, they're going to push for mediation, they're going to try to get out of it somehow. But the ones I had really fought for the agency because they were convinced, based on the evidence we presented, that we had done nothing wrong. And that's the first person you have to convince, is your attorneys and your HR. Once they're convinced, they're going to take it up for you. They're going to fight for you. And they're going to fight for the organization. So once they get it, and once the attorneys are determined that nothing was done wrong, the complaint is not valid, at least in my case, they're going to fight for you and they're going to fight for the agency. Now, what that means is that if the complainant doesn't want to settle, then the attorneys are going to get involved with the EEOC. They're going to make their case on why the case should be dismissed or dropped. Okay, they're going to go back and forth. The bottom line is you can still end up in court, even if your attorneys agree you did nothing wrong, okay? And you can still have to go through the legal process. I had to go through hours of depositions on a number of complaints. And a deposition is where your attorney's with you, the opposing attorney's on the other side, the complainant's on the other side, they're watching you, and they're asking you questions right to your face. And some of their questions could cover years of testimony, like I told you on my award complaint. And everything is being recorded. And everything that's recorded is later going to be put in a transcript. It's going to be given to the EEOC judge who's in charge of the case. Okay, so it's almost like being in trial. It's the next step before trial. And they're going to take depositions on every witness and the complainant. So our attorney got to question the complainant. Their attorney got to question all the agency witnesses. It's all under oath. It can be hours. It can be long days, okay? And that's what I tried to get across to you earlier in this presentation. You can be 100% right. You can have a complaint about a snowstorm, and yet you can have hours and hours and hours of activity just to prove your innocence. And that's the frustrating thing about this, is proving your innocence when you know you're innocent, right? So that's what you have to get over. We're going to talk about that in a little bit here, but that can be very frustrating on the deposition side. And of course, the next step is submission of evidence. As they prepare for trial, they'll ask you for evidence. I had to, for example, on the awards complaint, I had to go back 3 years. I had to get every person that was in the same job as the complainant. I had to get their numbers for every month. I had to get their quality reports. I had to get all of that to justify why I gave awards to one and why I didn't give an award to the other. And you better have some system in place, some legitimate, objective system on why you give awards, why some get cash and why some don't. Because in my case, I was being alleged to be giving awards to those who were of my race, and this person was not, and they didn't get an award. Now, that case came out in my favor because the person that was alleged to get an award never got the award. But anyway, I had to go back through reams of data to prove what I did and sustain what my decision-making process was. So think about that when you're giving awards. Think about that when anybody's getting money or benefits. Am I being objective? Am I looking at everybody the same? If I was called on this, Would I have some objective measures to show quality, quantity, timeliness, emails, where I could show why some got it and some didn't? That's an important process of defending your company and your own integrity when these things come up for you. And the final thing that can happen in the formal realm is the court itself. I had to go to 2 EEOC trials, and it's just like a regular trial. It's just like somebody being put on trial for robbery or something like that. It's very formal. There's a judge. He is the judge and jury. There is no jury. He's it. He or she is it. And they're going to take your testimony, and they're going to ask questions. And the complainant's attorney is going to be able to cross-examine you, just like in a real trial. It's very unnerving. But I got to tell you a story. I want to keep you positive on this process because discrimination is a problem, and people who are being discriminated against have every right to go to the EEOC and get the discrimination stopped. Okay, they have every right to do that, and we want to encourage that. But at the same time, the people on the other end sometimes who are caught in the middle, and I'm going to talk about misunderstandings and how those can result in some of these. But the people that are caught in the middle really have to go through a lot, and sometimes it seems like the process is stacked against you. But let me give you a story on my first trial that I think will help you. It helped me have more faith in the process. So we went through all this. We went through the depositions. We went through submissions of evidence. We went through the affidavits. Everything is coming down to trial now. The agency witnesses are gathering at the court. There's a little room where we gather before we go to court. And there was like 4 or 5 of us. And here comes the judge walking in, the EEOC judge. And he says, will you all come over here? You all agency witnesses? Yes. Come on over here. You got us into a corner. And after he got us into a corner, he literally lit into us, holding his finger up, pointing at us. You better not lie in my court. I will fine you $10,000 and I'll put you away for 5 years. Do you understand me? And he just went on for a couple minutes. I thought he was like ripping into us. And after he got done, the complainant walked right behind him to his area. He had a separate area. And the judge didn't say a word to him. And I was thinking to myself, and I think all of us were, this is not going to be a fair trial. This judge has already convicted us. He's already saying we're guilty. He hasn't even heard our testimony yet. This is really unfair. And that's how it started. Well, once the trial started, the trial was over before noon. We started at around 9 o'clock. Before noon, the judge dismissed the trial. He dismissed the complainant. He actually threw him out of the courtroom, and he ruled in our favor. And it taught me something because this judge turned out to be very fair, very wise. He did listen to the evidence. He did read the affidavits. He did read the depositions. He looked at all the testimony. And before noon came on the first day, he called it. He called it in our favor. And that gave me a lot of encouragement to say to you when you go through this, have faith in the system. It's not perfect. It may seem like it's against you sometime because it does seem that way as you're going through it. But let the system work. In the end, in that case, the system worked. The justice was served for the defendants. And I had better faith in the process after that. So I hope that encourages you as you go through that. So on the next, we're going to look at the do's and don'ts. So once a complaint is filed, what do? I've talked about the process. I've talked about the complaints. I've talked about what the EEO investigator is going to do. But I'm going to give you some additional do's and don'ts that you need to be aware of as you're going through this process, okay? So you don't make a big mistake, because you can make a big mistake going through this process if you do certain things. So I want to tell you what to do and what not to do, and that's next.